Well, welcome to another Monday night with Ed Rensi and success and leadership and all the different things that go entailed with that. We are kicking off here tonight with a subject that I did not know anything about until literally Friday night. And Ed sent me a little link, and I started doing some studying, and I found out we're in a world of trouble. And I didn't know how bad things were, but this is something that affects every single person out here right now. And when I say every single person, you were just talking about it. Retirement plans, pension funds, state run pension funds, federal ran pension funds. And it's by a company called BlackRock. What do you know about BlackRock, Ed? I know you're pretty in depth into it, so I'll let you explain who they are and then I will get into what I found out about them just after what you gave me.
Well, every major union or organization that has a lot of employees will look for some organization to manage that money, awaiting growth, so that when people get ready to retire, they have a secure future. And there's a lot of companies that do that. One of the companies, the largest, I think, in the United States, I'm not 100% sure about this, but one of the very largest is an organization called BlackRock, run by a guy by the name of Fink. And that in and of itself is not really all that serious, except that when corporations have their annual meetings, whether it's Disney or McDonald's or Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola or any other company that has their pension funds invested, and under the federal state laws, the boards of directors of these companies have a responsibility to both the shareholders and to the pension holders so that they manage that money well. And so they put it into funds like BlackRock, Cerberus Capital Management, Clayton, Dublier and Rice, and others. But BlackRock is the biggest. And they have a very activist leadership in that BlackRock organization, starting with Fink. And they've taken some real significant positions for environmental, social, gender issues. And the vast majority of people that have money in those funds don't really get to have a voice in what those companies are doing, because they don't vote the shares of stock that these pension funds own, or that the investors own or manage. And so they pretty much have free reign. And when you really think about it, the shareholders appoint companies like BlackRock to represent them to the board of directors of major companies and influence policy and position. And we got a problem in the United States right now where some of these radical leftist agendas are being supported by these pension funds and by the people that manage those pension fund monies, whether the pension holders want it or not, because they have no voice. And, you know, guys like you, Roy, that's got a pension fund with your trucking company, if you look at BlackRock, they own a huge number of trucking companies that are public and have a big influence on what truck drivers across the United States are going to have when the day they retire. And you stop and think about the Teamsters Union historically, they took a lot of their pension funds and lost them and wasted them, grossly overinvested in Las Vegas and never got the money back. And many of those pension funds went bankrupt, frankly. If you talk to, people that were in the Teamsters Union, many of those guys would work, but they had to have a certain number of quarters with a specific local before they could retire. Well, every time they get close to having enough time with that particular local, they'd get moved into another local, or they'd fracture them and make two different locals. So there was a constant game going on. A lot of people that drove trucks never ever had the opportunity to collect a pension because the money kept getting moved around all the time and it never got to grow the way it should have. So right now, Disney's in a pickle because the CEO of the company apologized for a bill that was passed by the Florida legislators and signed by the government of Florida that said no child without parental permission, is going to be taught some of the woke behaviors. Well, the gay and lesbian community and others call it "Don't Say Gay" bill. Well, Disney's got a lot of folks that have those kind of preferences in their lifestyle, and they started having a big, loud voice, disproportionate, frankly, to the number of employees. So the CEO of Disney apologized for not taking a position. And frankly, this is one of the issues of leadership. CEOs of corporations have no damn business at all opining on behalf of the shareholders in public companies about social issues and issues of morality. Their job is to get a good return on investment for the shareholders and to ensure that their employees are working on behalf of the shareholders and getting paid fairly and treated fairly. But social activism is not part of their job review. It's not part of their responsibility. And we're slowly bullying people, board members, into behaving in ways that are just frankly not acceptable, in my opinion. And I'm not going to speak for every board member in the United States, but companies like BlackRock own these companies indirectly. And they're the ones that are voting the shares. And if they don't like what's going on in a company, they make their voice heard. And the average person who puts their money into that fund doesn't have a voice. And so they have no leadership opportunity. They don't get, and the only way the typical person could manage that is through their voting process for the House, the Senate, and local government. And frankly, those elections are so corrupt from the standpoint they really don't talk about what the people want to talk about. And so we have all kinds of job issues in this country. We got people that work for 20, 30 years with companies and don't get retirement. And Social Security becomes a bigger and bigger chunk of what they have to live on. And right now, our government is just totally out of control. We've passed a $6 trillion bill, and we're getting ready to start talking about next year that we haven't spent the money we got appropriated now. So how do people like Roy Bain and his fellow truckers and the guys that are working in jewelry stores and the gals that are working in grocery stores, how do you get your voice heard? And the only way you can really do it is at the ballot box or becoming active in local political campaigns. And you see what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia, when the parents got up in arms about the school board and what kind of curriculum they were putting into the schools. Now we've got a situation where merit scholarship doesn't mean anything anymore, and they're doing away with all these schools where very highly intelligent, motivated students are put in classes that are dumbed down to the person that's least capable in the class. So there's a lot of issues going on in our society today. Bottom line, it's an absolute failure of leadership at the federal level that trickles all the way down. If you look at Governor DeSantis in Florida, you look at Abbott in Texas and a few other states, North Dakota, you see people that are really listening carefully to their citizens and managing the state business on the basis of what the sentiment and what's good for the company or country and the state. So, okay, that's a very long speech. I'm sure you don't want me to go for 10 minutes.
Oh no, you're good because you got the backdrop set of what I'm fixing to get into. And folks, I told y'all on the last show that we did, Ed is always 6 steps ahead. Anytime you bring up any subject, he's 6 steps ahead of you. Ed dropped me something Friday. We talked for a little bit Friday, said, hey, this is what I want to talk about. So I said, okay. Well, he's kind of like the professor. He assigned me homework. So I took this to a whole new level over the weekend. And let me tell you something. Every single person, I don't care what you think about Republicans. I don't care what you think about Democrats. That doesn't matter. What I'm fixing to delve off into is so vastly beyond politics. It's insane. Ed mentioned woke business, so on and so forth. We're not even going to put woke on the side of it because that's the coin they put on there. But I'm going to give you a quick heads up, and I got some new stuff, and I'm going to show it on the screen right here as we're going. Biden's assault on shareholder capitalism, which I'm going to let Ed talk about that here in just a little bit. I looked up the annual budget for the United States. I think it said it's $22.6 million or $22.6 trillion. The amount of money BlackRock controls and in their assets in this company, and this, I think their board is 12 members, I think I read this morning. They handle $26 trillion. Okay, trillion, not billion, trillion. That's not something that I can't even, I don't even know how many zeros to put on the end of 26 to make 26 trillion. That's how ignorant I am to this fact of what I learned.
Well, I'll tell you what, listen to this, Roy. There are a million millions in a trillion.
Yes.
So if we paid $1 or $1 million every second to pay down all of our national debt, it would be 23,000 years before we paid it off.
Okay, so I'm telling you the annual budget in America is $22.6 trillion. The amount of money BlackRock handles is $26 trillion, more than our entire national budget for a year. One of the stories I read said it's 1/10 of the global economy for 1 year. That's how much, not America's economy, the world's economy. You've got 12 people that handle that much money. We talked about it the last show on here. Money equals power. These people have power, and they're in the news every day. You just don't pay attention to it. You don't hear what they're doing. They have executives jumping ship over at BlackRock now talking about ESG. And that's what everybody's considering the woke community. You have 12 people in a boardroom that come out and say, well, today we're going to go out and we're going to push out this social agenda, no matter what it is. They own 4 of the 6 major networks in America. They're a major stakeholder in Facebook, every social media platform. They can put out any message they want on those platforms and take over control. So after this weekend, I've nicknamed ESG as elitist shadow government. And I'm sorry, but that's exactly what it is. Everybody that is on Biden's White House staff left the Obama era, went to work for BlackRock, and now they're in the White House. Everybody needs to know that. These people are shaping American policy, period, by their money and by that 12 people. You want to talk about being scary? That to me is the scariest thing I've read or heard about. And I thank Ed for pointing this out to me. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have all of this stuff going on. BlackRock took the most COVID relief money of everyone combined in America. Everyone. The government gave them that much COVID relief. Did they really need that with $26 trillion that they were responsible for? I don't know. Ed, did you know any of this stuff? Because I started studying this. I didn't know this.
Well, it's like it's an old adage that says if you want to know where the issues are, follow the money. The IRS, when they took down the mob, the mafia, they followed the money. And money, as you said, is power. And historically, we've had very responsible people that respected the power of money and behaved in ways that were for the common good and for the common man. You stop and think about World War II and, all the men and women that came home. Well, I'll take you way back in time. The Oklahoma land rush, where they fired a gun and everybody took off across the plains to stake out a farm or a ranch.
2 acres and a mule.
Right. And that land belonged to the Native American Indians. It belonged to the Aboriginal people of the United States, which wasn't even a country at that point. they were shoved aside, and that's why just recently there was a major lawsuit won by an Indian nation. I think it was in Oklahoma, where the whole eastern part of the state is under the control of the tribe, and state and federal law means nothing on tribal land. It is tribal law that counts. So now they're having all kinds of struggle trying to figure out what to do about that. But think about this. I'll give you $10 if you can find the name of one African American that got one parcel of land in the Oklahoma land rush. So
I wouldn't even know where to research that. I wouldn't.
Don't waste your time. I've already done it. I know exactly now.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, government with weak leadership, with indifferent leadership, could cause no end of problems for common man. And people don't even know what's going on. And I look at this fiasco that we got in our government today, where we have the Biden-Harris administration. The longer the two of them talk about anything, the scarier I get. I mean, it is just, to think about Kamala Harris being in Poland talking to the head of the Polish government, and somebody asks her a question and she starts giggling and defers to him to answer a question about U.S. policy. It's just the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. And Biden, he is so ineffectual. And I think his performance in Afghanistan gave Putin a green light to come out in the open as the horrible terrorist he really is. And most people don't realize this, but when the CIA terminated Pinochet in Chile, Jimmy Carter went on a rampage. He saw to it that the CIA could never, ever again commit wet operations and assassinate political leaders. In fact, I think in any way, shape, or form, murder is immoral and it's abhorrent in any way you want to look at it. There's better ways to solve problems. But sometimes evil is profound. And you have to take up slings and arrows to deal with evil. And Putin is evil. He is pure, unmitigated evil. He's out of control, and he's got enough people around him with weapons that nobody can get to him and make sense of what the hell he's doing. He wants to come back and have the great Russia as the Tsars did. For what? To suppress the people of Russia? I spent time in Russia. The people there are wonderful people. They're just like everybody else walking the face of the earth. They just want to go to bed at night in peace, wake up in the morning in peace, go to work, earn some money, get some food on the table, raise families, and enjoy life. And Putin is turning Russia into hell, and he's certainly turned Ukraine into hell. And he's bombarding the civilian population to get them to turn against the leadership in Ukraine, so he can come in and save everybody. One of the recent former congressmen, I think, or she may have been a senator, talked about the 22 or 23 bio labs that the United States funds and operates along with the Ukrainian government there. With all this business with Wuhan, why are we doing that at all? Because it's clear these scientists have no control over what they're doing. Since Biden got elected president, have you seen Fauci on television anywhere?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mention up this right here. I read this story right here. I'll post it up. These are stories that I've read since Friday, just so everybody knows. A grand jury is probing BlackRock, Gates, and Anthony Fauci right there, involved in all of the stuff to do with what we're talking about right here. BlackRock is in the middle of all of this stuff right now. Everything turned around. To me, it's crazy.
Well, my wife is not happy with me doing what I'm doing because she said, "You're 77 years old. Why do you need the grief? Why do you need to get yourself, put a bullseye on your back with whoever's listening to this?" The reality of it is, if we don't start standing up for what the hell we believe in and what we believe this country is all about, we're going to be in trouble. And we do it peacefully. I'm not suggesting anything other than that. But the voting booth is the place to do it. We need to go to school board meetings, city hall meetings. We need to go to legislative conferences, and we need to tell our government we're fed up with it and that we want change. We got to. Everybody keeps saying to me, we need term limits. We have term limits right now. And I've got a suggestion for your audience and every citizen in the United States. Don't vote for anybody that's in office now. Vote them all out, every one of them. I don't care what state, school boards, governors, vote them all out. Let's get a whole batch of new people. Let's start over again.
Let's find people that this situation hasn't been into. Yes, I'm a Trump. I voted for Trump. Whatever. Everybody needs to understand BlackRock is heavily invested in Trump too. Larry Fink defends Trump to the hilt. Everything he does. I mean, this is what I said. We're in a position. This is what we got into last week. We're in a position right now in the United States, and I believe this 110%. We need a legitimate third-party candidate that is not corrupted by a company such as this. And I mean, Ed, I don't know what your business backgrounds are, things like that. You probably run across these people. Y'all are going to laugh. I have to tell a story about Ed on Friday. He was telling me names and things like that. And I was like, dude, I just need to know a quarter of the people that you know. Just a quarter. And he goes, well, I've got 2,900 friends on my Facebook page. Like, I got 5,000. There's a difference. His 2,900 are in a completely different tax bracket than I am. They got a whole lot more influence than I do. But we need to find somebody that is not managed by that can literally look these people in the eye and say, well, if you don't support this, we're going to bankrupt your company. We're going to do this. One of the executives I listened to say it, they brainwash executives into voting one way or the other. You need leaders. And Ed's got some of them that he shared with me this week that are going to stand up, and I'm going to use adult language, so I apologize, and turn around and tell them, fuck you, I don't care what you say, I don't care what you think. We're doing business the way we believe. This is what it's at. Larry Fink just put in his new corporate letter that came out last month that said all of this ESG is not working. We need to back away from it. We need to let company owners run the company the way it's supposed to. When you do that, they automatically correct for themselves. They do more social good, more social impacts if they're left alone and quit being forced to do some things, which is what 2 years later is exactly the opposite of what he's been preaching for 2 years. Am I wrong?
I'm not going to comment on whether he's right or wrong. He said both things. I want to back up a minute. There's a lot of examples in this world of people doing really good work for all the right reasons. And I'm going to give you, this is very close to home, so I have intimate knowledge of this. McDonald's Corporation made the decision to shut down 850 restaurants in the Soviet Union. 850 restaurants, over 60,000 employees. I think it's actually closer to 880,000 employees, something like that. It's a huge number. 800,000 employees. It's going to be about a $50 million kick in the shorts on income profit monthly while those things are closed. The reality of it is, it's not just McDonald's that are going to pay, the shareholders are paying the price for that. Every employee of McDonald's in the Soviet Union is out of a job suddenly. And I can get into a little bit more detail about that. McDonald's is going to continue to pay them, which is heroic in my opinion, because it's not a small price to pay. But every lettuce supplier, every hamburger supplier, every potato supplier, every bun supplier, all the equipment suppliers, the packaging suppliers, all of a sudden, none of them have business with McDonald's. And Pepsi's doing the same thing, Coke's doing the same thing. All major U.S. companies are bailing out of the Soviet Union. That is one giant-sized kick in the butt statement to Putin that the world's ganging up on you. And I think that's why he's doing what he's doing. I think he's desperate right now because he knows if this keeps up, that he's not going to survive it. one way or the other. So he's a cornered rat right now, in my opinion. Um, so there are companies. The founder of McDonald's, Ray Kroc, his number one guy was a guy by the name of Fred Turner. I worked for them I worked for both those guys for 35 years. Fred Turner told me, if he told me once, he told me 1,000 times. Ed, when in doubt, do what's right, no matter how difficult. And that's a problem we have in our country today because executives don't do what's right, what is difficult. They do what's going to give them the most cover. And I see some of the comments and statements that are being made at the CEO level of some of these corporations, and they're scared to death they're going to lose their job or get into trouble because shareholders, activist shareholders, 10 people can make so much noise, and the news media covers it and blows it up like it's 100,000 people, and it's not. And we've got, you mentioned the press. I'm not quite sure I even know what journalism is anymore based on what I see. When I was going to high school, Danny Carrier, my history teacher, told me, he said, make sure you read 6 newspapers a day. We didn't have television and radio like we do today. He said, read 6 newspapers a day from all around the world to really understand what's going on so you get a different point of view. Well, to this day, I still read 6 newspapers a day, and I read as much as I can get my hands on. I just bought 3 new books today. One of them was written by Hansen about the failure of citizenship. If we don't educate ourselves, we don't educate our kids, if we don't take a leadership position ourselves, it's never going to grow. And I'm chairing an organization now that's going to start putting forward shareholder proposals at annual meetings of major corporations, talking about some of these issues and seeking to reestablish some, I don't want to say pressure, but come back to the things that founded this country: hard work, dedication, loyalty, and start talking about some of those attributes that good citizens should have for the majority, not the minority. Vocal minorities should not run this country. We don't need 25 people out of 100 dictating how the rest of us are going to live. And when you look at what's happening in our school system, they are government controlled, government managed indoctrination centers for socialism, communism, and wokeness. They're not teaching kids how to read and write anymore. And if you doubt me, you start talking to some of these kids about science or literature, talk to them about Shakespeare. They have no idea who Shakespeare is. They don't understand that some of the works of Shakespeare really documented what life was like back in those periods. Okay, I'm starting to rant. I don't.
You need to read my Facebook feed one day, and you'll know what you're talking about with education wise. And I'm not a grammar Nazi by no means, but there's some of them I got to go back and go, what did you just say? I can't even read it. But on this moment, I gotta jump in our sponsor here that helps make these podcasts available, Rick Workman at Workman's Communication.
Tired of calling multiple companies to complete your low voltage projects? Minimize the hassle by calling Workman Communications, your locally owned one-stop shop for all low voltage needs. We tackle everything from commercial and residential data, telephone cabling to access control installation, CCTV, alarms, and audio-video solutions. With no job too big or too small, we'll ensure your project will be completed to your standards with precision quality results. Let's start a new project together.
So we got a bunch of comments on here. We got Heather Huell. We have to stand our ground. Brent Huell, I understand. Heather Huell, vote when you're talking about going out and vote. Corey Pinfold, Biden must be forced out of office or this nation will be deceased before the next election. We will be owned by China. Heather Huell asking, how do you find a person like we were talking about? Heather, it boils down to is look to somebody outside of politics. And I am not saying me, but look at somebody like a Ed who does stuff on the sides, like what we're doing right here on these shows. There is tons of people. Look at Joe Rogan. He gets made fun of constantly. And he doesn't say, he's a comedian just like Zelensky was. Doesn't really, he talks about aliens and suddenly he's the danger to national security. Somebody like that, there are people out there that honestly believe in moving a country forward and doing the correct things. There are plenty of CEOs out there. I don't know if they how big they are anymore, but people like Tandy Leather Company, always been a great company, and just recently seen another testament. They still believe in customer services. There are corporations out there that still emphasize customer service over profit, I guess is the best way to say. But
Roy, I want to talk about that because I think that's a very important question. Where do you find people like that? You find people like that in your local community who are running for school board, who are running for city council. These people are made, they're not found. And I look at, I don't know how much your audience are students of history, but when they were creating the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, they were forming our government the way it was founded in 1776. They wrote what are called the Federalist Papers because the colonies were very concerned about what central government would do to the states once the Union was formed, because they lived with imperial government for Great Britain and they hated that idea. They wanted to control their destiny locally. So in the Federalist Papers, and the way our government's set up with three separate branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial, the most powerful government official in the United States is the governor of the state. Those people, and if you read the Federalist Papers, governors of the states were meant to be the drivers of the democracy. Actually, it's not a democracy. It is a representative republic. And this is part of the problem with our school system. They don't teach any of this stuff. You get a governor like Abbott in Texas. The liberal left, George Soros types, are puking hundreds of millions of dollars into Texas for Buttigieg to get elected governor of Texas. Now, I don't know how much you know about that guy, but his father and his wife's father are both billionaires. They own tons of real estate. Buttigieg's family owns housing, basically slum housing, in San Antonio, Texas. He's very privileged. He's never really had a job in his life, and he's now campaigning. He ran for president. That's exactly the kind of person we don't need. We don't need a rich white kid that gets elected because his father buys votes. And that's what you see everywhere you go. And if you look at Biden got into office for one fundamental reason. The wealthy Democrats, guys like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, well, not Musk so much, but Bezos and some of those people just gave the Democratic Party huge sums of money. He didn't even come out of his basement to campaign in Delaware. And he got elected in the slimmest of margins. And I don't think there was fraud in those elections, because the pure definition of fraud, I don't think happened. I do think that they changed the voting laws in a lot of states so it favored Democratic candidates, but that's neither here nor there. I want to make a point. I want to make a point. My mom and dad were both Democrats. I grew up as a Democrat. I believe in the democratic principles because they were coal mining people, they were steel workers, and they were truck drivers. They needed the unions for workplace safety because we didn't have such a thing called OSHA. And the safety for automobiles and trucks were grossly enhanced because they worried about driver safety. We don't have people like that today in government. So where do we find these people? We find these people in state government. Joe Manchin. I'll tell you, if Joe Manchin were to run for president tomorrow, I'd vote for him because he's a man of principle and dignity, and he is a strong Democrat. But he's got his focus is the good of the country, not the party and not the labor unions or not some other special interest group. And Trump was like that because Trump, he didn't give a damn about anybody except his own little world. But he spent his own money to get elected, and he was needed at the time. Now there's another person out there. I wish the DeSantis would run one of these days because he's brilliant. I wish Abbott would run one of these days. He's brilliant. There's other governors, Manchin, if he ran, that would be wonderful. To have Joe Manchin and Ron DeSantis to stand on a stage and debate one another will educate the American people what our representative republic should be all about. Then we'd have a choice. With Trump and Biden, a choice.
Kristi Noem's another one that would go in there out of South Dakota. If you ever get a chance to, everybody should go follow her Facebook page and what she's doing. And where I gained a lot of respect, she was sitting when all this COVID stuff was going on, and yes, I'm going back to racing in this. She was sitting in the stands at a dirt racetrack drinking a beer with fans with dirt on the top of her beer can. That's real. That's not, I'm sorry. We're going to get into it. We saw Ronald Reagan go down to NASCAR and go to the Daytona 500. If you've ever had a chance to listen to Dale Jr. talk about eating Kentucky Fried Chicken with Ronald Reagan and his dad and all them under the tent, it's kind of a cool story, but don't know that Ronald Reagan was necessarily a man of the people. He's another one of the Hollywood elitists, if you get into that. And that's people that we don't need more people like that. We need people, I said it last time, if they can't tell you what the price of a gallon of milk is in the grocery store today, you don't need them in office. They're not in there for your best interest.
Roy, I want to back up a minute. I had lunch with Ronald Reagan in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And he's exactly what you're talking about. He was in Hollywood because that was his profession, but he was not of Hollywood. He grew up in Illinois. You know, he was shaped dramatically by what happened to the movie industry because of the fact that the big producers weren't allowed to distribute their own films. And that's when he decided to switch from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, because he said it's constitutionally unfair to limit their ability to practice their craft. And he went into a big, long story about it. And events shape us. Events in our lives shape us. Boy, I don't know how the hell you and I got together. I guess we had a guy that brought us together who turned out to be a convicted felon.
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody's got their gifts, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was a blessing for me because I got my eyes opened up with some of the issues that you're dealing with every day in the world you're in. So, okay, back to your audience.
No, that's fine. Our audience is eating all this up, and that's, to me, what we're seeing. And I'm going to get into something that we're going to get back into the whole BlackRock thing. And this, and I got a whole bunch of stuff to pop up on here, so you're going to see some pop-ups coming your way. So hang on, guys, because Ed started this, so now I got to show I did homework over the weekend. All right, right here, BlackRock ownership in Walmart. There's one. BlackRock becomes key player in crisis response for Trump and the Fed. They were in the White House when Trump was in there, in the Federal Reserves. BlackRock and the Fed, same story. BlackRock, this was the one that got me. We just got through the millions of doses of Moderna, Pfizer, and all this shit. BlackRock has ownership in Moderna. Why do you think they were pushing the vaccination so much? Oh, how BlackRock is on track to infiltrate the Biden White House, right there. They're the vast majority of the people in his staff come from BlackRock. Huge ESG funds haul. That's right there. That's the owner of Larry Fink right there, the owner of BlackRock right there. It's in the New York Post. Let's go right down the list here. This is an article that Ed asked me to read. I read it. Biden's assault on shareholder capitalism. Who really pays for ESG investing? We just had a whole long school. You and I do through our 401ks and all of our stuff. We're the ones that are paying for it. Everything that they preach is right out of our funds. Now, here is something interesting. I'm going to hop in here with Ed. I can see him down here on the bottom. John Kerry's financial crusade against oil and gas. You have BlackRock, who owns the oil and gas companies. You got John Kerry talking about going to electric, doing away with this. And then the same week, BlackRock comes, oh no, we got to have more oil and gas. They're not on the same page in this in itself. But here we go. We just talked about a company with $26 trillion in assets. They control the world market of oil. Now, here's something else that floored me with all of this stuff, and I'm gonna close this out. Everybody's talking about the, how do I want to say, the supply chain crisis. Stores and shelves are empty. Gas prices are through the roof. Truck drivers can't get everything through where it needs to be, blah, blah, blah. They're blaming the truck drivers. I just showed you story after story. They own Walmart. They own the oil and gas companies. They own the COVID vaccination companies that made the vaccination. They're major stakeholders, meaning they vote on the board of all these companies. Now, here's one that'll floor you. They are a major shareholder in the world's largest freight broker in America, the ones that bring all the products on the ships. So now you're seeing trucker convoys in Canada, trucker convoys in America. You're seeing America people standing up saying, we're not going to get your stupid shot. We're not going to follow your stupid mandates. We're not going to put our lives on hold. To me, you're seeing a punishment of these people and showing their clout and what they have. They've controlled everything in your life. I asked early in the COVID response thing, why are we allowed to go to Walmart? Why are we allowed to go to these big chain stores, but mom and pop stores can't stay open? Telling you right now, there's your answer, what I just showed you on this screen tonight. You have a company worth $26 trillion telling the White House what to run, what to leave open, what to close, so they can monopolize further. We have an SEC that's supposed to stop monopolies. But what about the monopoly on the monopolies? Nobody's looking past the monopoly, the people that actually own the monopolies. That's them 12 guys that we just talked about, or ladies and gentlemen that we just talked about. I don't know how you compete it, but I need everybody to understand what's out there. It's crazy what the board of directors at BlackRock actually control. They control every bit of your daily life, whether you want to admit it or not. And I don't think I'm wrong.
Roy, I want to make a couple very important points because there is some differentiation in this. BlackRock doesn't actually own these companies. They control a huge amount of stock on behalf of pensioners and investors. So they're speaking theoretically with the voice of the shareholder, but they don't. The shareholders, like myself, I own stock in companies. I own stock in fat brands, for example. I vote those shares, or my wife votes those shares. BlackRock does not vote those shares, not supposed to. But there are companies like that you mentioned, a bunch of them, that they have a big position in as far as managing shares for shareholders. Well, if they don't send that ballot to the shareholder, they have way too much influence. And Andy Pudsner, who was a lawyer out of California, he used to run Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, has written some opinion pieces for the Wall Street Journal and others news places. And I'd recommend you read his work, because he talks about the fact that the shareholders are not being well informed and not being able to cast a vote on their own behalf. Because if you don't vote, they get to vote those shares. And we really should not be allowing investors to vote our shares for us. We ought to make that decision. So there is a technical difference in what you're saying. I own shares in the company. I want to vote those shares, but if I put that money into a fund, you pick the fund you want to put it in. The fund manager may be voting those shares contrary to what I believe in. And that's what's got to stop. I want my voice heard. And what we've done is we've taken the average man and woman on the street and taken their voice away. Social media has taken their voice away. Look at how many people are being banned on Facebook and on TikTok. They just erase them off the platform. I've been put in Facebook jail 20 times. And right now, anything I post of any political nature goes into a holding pattern for 90 days so they can check it and make sure it's okay to publish.
Oh, well, let's take it a step farther. Major stakeholder in Facebook, BlackRock. There you go. Do we need to go any further? There you go. Right, prime example. I shared links to 2 of those articles that you talked to in the comments. Anybody wants to read them, they're available on the Wall Street Journal. So, Ed, you told me a little bit about what you've got started with the gentleman you just mentioned and somebody else. I want to hear a little bit about what y'all have on plan with doing that.
One of the co-founders of Home Depot started an organization called Job Creators Network. And I've been participating with them for a number of years and helping young people understand what it means to go into the workforce. Because a lot of young people have gone into the workforce and don't have a clue. For example, when I was a store manager at McDonald's, this goes way back before you were born, Roy. I had an employee come to me and said, "This is my first paycheck. I want to know who this FICA person is," because there was a deduction for FICA, which is your Social Security deduction. So I want to know who FICA is. You can't believe how many young people today, right this minute, and I'm talking about kids that are 21 years old and younger, and maybe even some older. And that's how Jesse Waters got his start on Fox, by the way. He went out and interviewed college students and asked them simple questions like, do you know who Thomas Jefferson was and when did he live? And how absolutely nobody knew who he was. And so the goal was to teach young people the value of work. The federal government has no money. State government has no money. The only money state and federal government has is the money you give to them in taxes. And if you look at it, if you make $30,000 a year in salary, you're probably only going to be able to take $24,000 of that home, and your money's getting taxed on top of tax on top of tax. You pay income tax. Okay? Now you got net money. You go to the grocery store. In Florida, you pay 8.5% sales tax. So you're getting taxed again. You buy a house. You pay taxes, sales tax to buy the house. And then you pay real estate taxes. So every job you have, and it's estimated out of every dollar you own, you only get to keep 6 cents.
Yeah, Oregon has no sales tax, I have to admit. One good thing about Oregon. We're going to leave it at
that. What about your income tax? What about your real estate taxes? What about your social tax?
I don't own any property, so I couldn't tell you about real estate tax. So, yeah, I'm cheap. I don't own no property yet. So, Heather Kuehl wants to know, how do you stop that, though, and get back how to have shareholders take back control?
Well, if you own stock in a company, you have to let anybody that's managing that fund, you have to send them a registered letter, and say, I want to vote my own shares. The problem is let's take the United Mine Workers. They collect dues from all their members. It's supposed to go into a pension fund, health and welfare, and all the rest of it. They give it to BlackRock to manage.
Yep.
So who do they answer to? Do they answer to the coal miner, or do they answer to the guy that's running the union?
Well, I have said I have never.
So the only way you can really, Heather, the only way you can really vote your shares is you got to let the funds know you want to vote your shares. You've got to send them a note and tell them that.
I'm 51 years old, never been a part of a union, so I don't know how unions work. All I know is the thought of unions is great. The reality is just what we talked about, is the money and the power always seems to corrupt them in the end. And I wish that wasn't the case. And,
well, there was a really good reason to have labor unions many years ago because of worker safety. But You know, when you look at what's going on today, Joe Biden is talking about a $15 minimum wage, federal minimum wage now. And now he's talking about a $20 minimum wage because they're trying to buy votes for the upcoming election in November. Just stop and think about it. If you got a kid that's brand new going to work, an African American young man or woman in Chicago, they're going to go to work for Burger King. And they're going to get paid $7, $8 an hour. They have zero job skills. But if they stay there and apply themselves, go to school, one of these days, they're likely to end up being the CEO of a company because they're learning work habits that are going to be beneficial. And the people say to me, well, that's bullshit, Ed. No, it's not, because I started out working for McDonald's making 85 cents an hour and ended up being the CEO in 35 years.
Yep.
Because you got in the United States military used to be the largest training organization in the world for training young men and women on how to go to work and be productive and follow orders and discipline and all the rest of it. And they came out of that training as better people and better citizens. Today,
say that me right there.
Where does a young person learn how to work? You know, the largest single job loss in the history of the United States has been in farming. I got a friend of mine who has 25,000 acres in South Dakota. Got $40 million worth of John Deere tractors and equipment to run that farm. It used to be it used to take 60 people on the farm to feed one person in a city. Today, one person on a farm can feed 60 people in the city. So you've got a situation where technology has eliminated jobs all over the place. So when you look at the employment situation, entry-level jobs, I don't care if it's at a fast food joint, a gas station, a Wawa, I don't care where it's at. If they go in there and work and go through a training program, learn discipline, some kids don't know that they got to get out of bed in the morning and brush their teeth and get dressed and go to work on time. I had a kid working for me one time, wonderful employee. He was late about every other day. And I said, you keep this up, I'm going to fire you. I said, why are you late? He said, well, my brother gets up before me and he shuts the alarm clock off so I don't hear it. So it's not, I'll buy you an alarm clock. I gave the kid an alarm clock. Man, he was 8 after that. It was his own alarm clock. Somebody had to teach him that. Well, then all of a sudden he started coming in late again. I said, what the hell's going on now? He said, well, the battery in my car is dead. I said, go buy a battery. So he comes to work the next day and I said, you buy a battery? He said, nah, I stole it out of a car. I said, so he ended up, this is no joke, he was working for a company that I started called Leaps and Bounds, which was a play place for McDonald's. And it was the forerunner of the play place we put on the restaurants. And that kid ended up, I kept him, moved him into McDonald's after Leaps and Bounds got sold. And he ended up working in our test kitchen washing dishes. And ultimately became an executive in the test kitchen, helping run all the menu development for McDonald's. But those stories are rare these days. They're absolutely rare. You talk to a kid today and say, hey, how would you like to be a long-haul truck driver? What do you think they're going to say?
They'll probably ask, what's that? That's the first question.
A potential career. They think that food, honest to God, you talk to young people, they think that, where do you go to get beef? Well, we go down to the grocery store to get beef. I said, no, where's it come from? Well, I don't know. The grocery store has it. They have no clue. This is really crazy. I shouldn't talk about this. I did some work at an inner city school in Chicago. And those kids in that school, a bunch of them, could not understand where eggs came from. Had no idea where eggs came from. I even asked them, my background, I was going to be a school teacher. I said, where do you think Jewel grocery store gets their eggs? Where do they get their eggs from? They looked at me like, well, they just have them. Like they're magic or something. Anyway, we got a lot of people that are just very unaware of what the hell is going on in this world.
Donna Tupper says AOC could tell you where the eggs come from.
Well, you know what's tragic about her? She's a very smart, capable woman, but she's got an agenda to destroy the United States because she is an avowed socialist. And her and
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders are the same cloth. You stop and think about this. AOC became a member of the House of Representatives, and she's one of the most ignorant people I've ever listened to in my life. She has no common sense at all. She thinks this Green New Deal, I want to tell you something, a Green New Deal, if everybody in the United States was gifted a Tesla tomorrow, we don't have enough electricity production. You know what we'd have to do? We'd have to build 500 nuclear power plants just for cars.
How many coal generating power plants to provide the electricity for the electric cars? I'm just saying. We'll leave it at that. Shut up on that one. So,
well, wait till you start driving a rig that's an electric that has a freight of 12 pounds so you can carry 43,000 pounds of batteries.
I can tell you right now, I want to drive one of the damn Tesla trucks. They look awesome. I don't know whether I'd like it or not, but I want to drive one. They look cool as crap. I don't care.
Well, I looked into buying a Tesla myself because I like the science and the technology and everything. But if my wife and I decide to drive back to Chicago, instead of it being a 2-day trip, it'd be a 6-day trip. There's no way in hell I'm going to do that.
Well, yeah, that's the other problem. I don't know where you'd stop fill it up at the end of the night, but that's all other. Brett Kuehl says, Ed, I like that mug logo. I got one that matches it in the truck. I'm going to brag. I've got one in the truck that matches it for my coffee, sir. It pays to know somebody. Oh, there's my brag. But my buddy Jason McClung, Duncan, yeah, we got Duncans in the house over there. Brent Kuehl, 0 to 103 seconds. We're in some real stuff. That Brent Kuehl says, oh my God, it looks like our logo. Wow. So, but no. So my wife brought up something, and I'm going to bring up her topic for our discussion tonight. She brought this to me, and she wants me to share this. What are your thoughts on our White House inviting TikTok influencers to the White House and giving them security briefings?
I'll just say it instantaneously. It's sophomoric as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you watch, I don't even look at that garbage, but it shows you how absolutely shallow our citizens are, and how even more shallow the White House is. But here's the thing: there's only one reason why they're doing that, and one reason only. They have lost the independent adults who vote. They're trying to get teenagers to vote. That's why they want to pass this bill that says if you're 16, you can vote.
Yep.
Because there is no way in hell the Democrats are going to get reelected unless they get a different voting base. That's why they're changing all these laws in all these states. The federal election laws are a little bit different, so they're going to have problems with it. But I can tell you, this is a cancer that will take a decade to either cure or get worse. And the whole reason, my wife's got a niece that's on TikTok.
I know we were getting this story. I knew it was coming.
And I'm told that she makes $1 million. I don't know if she does not. I had a house in Chicago that I put way too much money into, and she wanted to buy because she liked the swimming pool. And she's 21 years old. And I'm like, I know another kid that's here in Florida whose parents are really good people, and he's a really good kid. He spends his whole life making a fortune off of YouTube wrecking cars.
Yes.
Cletus McFarland. I look at okay, so social media allows you to make money, but where do we take raw material? Where do we take the essential ingredients of life, add value to them so that we can lift people that don't have access to TikTok or YouTube or computers? There's so many young people today that grow up in houses. They got a cell phone. They don't know how to use them. They just know how to punch buttons. They don't understand the technology. They don't know what 5G is. They have no awareness. What are they going to be like when they're 60 years old? What are they going to be like when they're 50? They're going to be wards of the state. Somebody's going to have to pay to keep them alive because they won't know how to do it themselves. I mean, right now, I know damn well if the shit hit the fan, I could pick up my shotgun and everybody in my neighborhood have plenty to eat.
Yep.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm going to survive the worst of it, one way or the other, because I've eaten dandelion stew. You know, I've eaten rabbit and groundhog and raccoons, and
I drank sassafras tea and all of that. Yes.
I drank sassafras tea before I knew it caused cancer.
So Heather Kuehl, you asked a question. She asked, "Are you serious?" Heather, hand to God, 110%. Yes, they invited 12 TikTok social media influencers there to give them the daily briefing on Ukraine and all that stuff. They brought them up there to do all of that stuff. I wish I could figure out the technology to do this. I have share screen option, but it looks really weird when you put it up on here. She took what they said in there and brought it out there just to make fun of Republicans, period. That's all the video was about. Now, I'm going to delve off into something that I have a ton of respect for in the same group. I do not like what they've done in the past. I don't like what they stand for, but there's a hacker collective called Anonymous who has done more to help the war in Ukraine and help the Ukrainian people than our own president. They're taking all the images and stuff that Russia is blocking out of social media and all that stuff. They've taken over their state-run TV channels and are showing that to the Russian people against them. I think that's pretty cool. That they may have different goals and objectives than what I believe in, but they're showing leadership. They're putting forth a foot and showing the world really what's going on.
Well, look,
we're back.
This is a simple thing. You can build bridges across rivers the right way or the wrong way. And building bridges with these TikTok people will come back to haunt you someday because they're going to turn against you. Ultimately, they're going to wise up. They're going to get understanding. And social media is having way too much influence on the mores of our country today. I don't know what to do about it. I wish I had an answer to it. But there is no filter. Zuckerberg is a god because they passed legislation, which he brought forward, that says that the federal government cannot do anything to them if they stifle free speech. If they throw me off the platform, I have no right to say they're impinging my ability for free speech. And that's one of the most important tenets of practicing religion and free speech are two of the most important tenets of our Constitution. But those kind of things ultimately will bite them in the butt. And you can see this right now with what's happening to school boards all across the United States. There was a book that was written, and I'd recommend everybody read, called Race to the Bottom. It's sitting back here behind me. Race to the Bottom is about what happened that caused our school systems become so controversial in what they're teaching and how they're teaching. And there's actually illustrations in there of some of the sex material that was being shown to kindergarten kids about the benefits of homosexuality and how to conduct homosexuality behaviors. We don't really understand what's going on at some of these locations, but for Joe Biden to invite somebody from TikTok to come in and get a briefing on Ukraine. But let's talk about a positive. In 1974, 73 and 74, I, along with the good McDonald's people in Philadelphia, the franchisees, suppliers, and three people from outside of McDonald's, created the Ronald McDonald House. And there's 360 Ronald houses, give or take a few, and there's a whole bunch of medical vans, dentistry vans, medical vans that McDonald's has. And the Ukrainian Ronald McDonald houses and the Russian Ronald McDonald houses are sending their mobile medical facilities to the front lines to care for people. They converted it from taking care of children to taking care of people that are being damaged in the shelling and bombing and what have you. there are a lot of good people in this world that have their hearts in the right spot. And if this business in Ukraine and Russia's behavior doesn't wake up this world to how dangerous communism and socialism is, um, I don't know what will, because we are in a crisis. Putin's just nuts enough that it wouldn't surprise me at all that he launches a tactical nuclear weapon. And I'll tell you what, if he does that, you're going to see people like Germany and some other places go batshit just because of that. And we could have a nuclear holocaust in an hour. In an
Yep.
hour. And all he's got to do is decide he's going to take out a U.S. military base just because. And right now, you got to remember, he does all kinds of false flag operations. The reason why he's going into Ukraine right now is he said because he's got all these chemical labs that are supported by the United States government, and he's got to eliminate them. So he's trying to find them. He's trying to say that the Ukrainians assaulted him first. He didn't drop the first bomb, and that kind of misinformation. People in the Soviet Union have no idea what's going on. They've shut off all the media. So only young people that got smart devices have a clue what's going on.
Well, and that's what I was saying about that anonymous hacker collective. They're showing that stuff to the Russian people. They're showing the reality of it. And that's, to me, I think that's one of the coolest things that I've seen out.
Is, Roy, they don't show it to enough of them because there just aren't that many devices in the Soviet Union. You know, there's almost 2 billion people in China. How many of them do you think have smartphones?
Well, that's it. It's they run. They have a block on. They have a geo blocking on all of their stuff. Same thing with North Korea.
It's only the people that can afford it, and the elites, the political elites, have them. The average guy out toiling in a hog farm doesn't have one.
Yep. And you were talking about books. I'm going to tell you another one that I've listened to that really changed my life about politics and all that stuff too. It's called Blood, Money, and Power. It's written by Barr McClellan, who was one of Lyndon Johnson's attorneys. Y'all should read. Y'all, if you ever get a chance to do it, it's Blood, Money, and Power. I listened to it on CD. It was 9 CDs long. It was, and there's some stories in there that related right back to where I grew up with a company called Red Barn Chemicals down there in Texas that was kind of a front for it. And man, they were right down the street from where I grew up, or the road. Not even it was a dirt road, but they were 2 miles from our house. We used them to get anhydrous ammonia and stuff like that, fertilizer for our fields. And it was like, man, I started listening to that. I was like, that's pretty close to home. That was right down the street.
Hey, I want you to text me the name of that book because I didn't write it down. But you just said something that we better all wake up to here real fast. You know, Biden came into office and he shut down the Keystone Pipeline. He suspended all new leases for oil exploration, and he changed the process to get permitting and all that kind of stuff. And he's blaming the oil price on Putin, which is the most asinine thing I've ever heard of in my life. But here's an issue that nobody's thinking about. So much of our pharmaceuticals and fertilizers and plastics and things of that nature come out of the oil industry. We're headed for a shortage. And right now, anhydrous ammonia and a couple other compounds that are used to get the soil ready for spring planting, which we're sneaking up on real fast, has doubled in price. These farmers are saying, I talked to a guy yesterday, he's got a big farm here in Florida. He said, I'm going to cut in half what I'm going to farm next year. He said, I just can't afford what I'm going to have to spend to get. He said, I can only buy a small amount, so I'm only going to get enough fertilizer. And here, listen to this. His fuel bill for his farm equipment went from about $3,000 a month. He's projected it's going to be over $15,000 a month just to run his farm equipment. That's to put red diesel fuel in his tractors and stuff. Not to mention all these pickup trucks and stuff that are running on gasoline. Our food prices, we got a trucking problem today. We're going to have food shortages like you can't believe. Think about this. Ukraine and Russia together supply probably 20% of the world's wheat, soybeans, and oats. You know, we're big net. Ukraine ships a lot of stuff to the United States agriculturally, or Canada, or wherever. That's going to come to a screeching halt. Those farmers aren't going to farm this year. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Ukraine is a huge country. It's probably 50% of the size of the United States.
Yep.
And they got huge farmlands. And so we're going to start to see food prices go through the roof, and we're going to also see fuel prices continue to go up. And you can take 13 cents of federal taxes off that fuel, and it's going to go up because of shortages. If you don't have it, you can't buy it. And now stop and think about all the bunker C and all those big ocean going container ships that's going to cost 5 times more. Right now, I talked to a guy this morning that buys product in California and they ship it to Chicago. That truck used to cost him for his portion of that truck about $3,000. Last shipment he got was over $12,000, 4 times the cost. He said, "How am I can't absorb that." He said, "I got to pass that on to the consumer." So now he's not going to carry the product anymore.
Well, I'm going to share this up. A good friend of mine today that works for the same company I did, he's an owner-operator, just bought fuel today, and I believe that he bought it in Oregon. 203 gallons was $1,097.63 for 200 gallons of diesel fuel.
And diesel fuel ought to be cheaper than gasoline.
Yep.
And it's more expensive because of all the damn pollution crap they put on it. Not to mention all the blue death you got to stick in the thing. And
yeah, well, that's the blue death's going up right along with diesel fuel. That makes no sense. What did it suddenly cost more to buy urea? What? I don't know what happened. It's
start using your gas tank as a urinal.
Oh, so anyway, well, I think we're right at an hour and 11 minutes for tonight. I think we kind of covered that, and I know we definitely gave a lot of stuff for people to talk about. Lots of comments again tonight. Now I got to go back and read through all the comments. They've been coming in quickly tonight. So,
well, I'd like to see some of them if you get a chance.
Well, we can do that right now. We'll go right down right down the list.
Well, there might be something I'd like to talk about.
Heather Kuehl, hi Roy, hi Ed. Brent Kuehl, hi Roy, hi Ed. Lacey Kuehl, hi Roy and Ed. Lacey, congratulations on your heat race win. I watched that. Watched you drive from the back to the front. Great drop. I don't know who Facebook News. I'm in Wolf Creek. Got crap for service. Then we're talking about failures, yes, in leadership. Heather Kuehl, strong leader, and Governor DeSantis. Yes, we didn't get into all that stuff. Heather Kuehl, we need strong leaders on both sides. Heather Kuehl, that's why inflation is so high.
Yeah, I don't know if you know or not, but Heather's from Great Britain. So she's got an international perspective of who we are.
Well, I did not know that. Okay, that just makes me like her even more. So I had to have a world perspective because I was stationed in Japan for several years and spent a lot of time outside the United States. That's why I talk about the U.S.
Wait a minute. Glad. Do you like your sake hot or cold?
I don't like it, period, because I don't like rice. I hate rice. I hate it. So.
All right, we're done. I got to go say hello to my wife.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll hop off here. Y'all have a good night. Hang on. Hang tight for just a minute.